Good morning, kids. Today we're going to learn how to make a coffee painting card in a session called Hug in a Mug. I hope you'll have your materials ready. So let's begin. Take an A4 sheet of paper and fold it into half. This will be your card and place it horizontally. First step, take a pencil and draw a mountain, like a really obtuse, wide mountain on the sheet. Starting from 1/3 of the card. It doesn't have to be perfect. The next step is we're going to try to draw the cup. So you draw a U-shaped structure on your card. Basically, we're drawing a teacup. And you join the upper part of the U-shaped structure. And finally, you draw a ear or like a C on the right side of the cup. So this is going to be your cup. And at the back, I'm going to do some steam. It's like a hot cup of coffee and there's steam coming out of it. So what's at the back? The mountain is the edge of the table. The U-shaped structure with the C is the cup. And I've erased everything, all the overlapping lines. So now it's time to use the coffee. I hope you have coffee ready, water ready, a palette and a paintbrush. Okay, so the first step is to learn how to mix the coffee and water. The coffee that you have, you can already put some water in it to make it easier to take on your paintbrush. So the more water you use, the more dilute or the lighter the color will be because it will have less pigment. So for the first part, I don't want that much of pigment, so I'm going to use little coffee and a lot of water, and that's basically for the table. And I'm going to start painting towards from the pencil markings outwards. So the place where I touch the paper for the first time will have the most pigment. So always start from the pencil markings. And then the remaining part can have water because it will have less pigment. So mixing little coffee and water will give it a nice brown appearance. And you've done step 1 in coffee painting right now. So I'm going to be mixing a little more coffee to make the brown little darker. So mixing more coffee means you're getting more pigment. And I'm doing this so that I can paint the background darker, because usually if you want to show depth, the objects that are far away have to be darker than the objects that are close by are usually brighter. So I'm going to turn the sheet just to make it easier for me to paint, and see, it's so much more darker than what I painted the table. It's because I used so much more coffee. So you can experiment, decide what color is good for you, how much of pigment you want, how dark you want, and how light you want. I'm kind of happy with this amount of darkness, so I'm going to continue. If you want it more darker, you use more coffee. If you want it more lighter, you use more water. So the entire wall doesn't necessarily have to be as dark. The parts closest to the cup, closest to the junction between the table and the wall need to be the darkest. So the remaining part, I'm going to be just using water and making sure that the entire thing is painted. So take your time to do this. You can pause the video and make sure you finished it at your own pace. And once you're done doing it, you keep the paper aside to dry. And I've kept it aside to dry, and this is how it looks after it's dried. So it's time for me to paint the teacup. This again is going to be with different shades of brown by mixing coffee with varying amounts of water. So when you're painting an object, the part that is closest to you is always the brightest, and the part furthest is always the darkest. And the concept of shadows. So the part close to the object is going to be darker because it has a bit of a shadow to it. And that's what I'm painting right now. Take little coffee pigment mixed with water and just outline the part which is closest to the bottom of the cup. That's showing that the cup is placed on the table and there's a little bit of shadow under it. So now I'm going to outline the top edge of the cup, and that's separating the outside of the cup from the inside of the cup. This is not my final color, but I'm kind of just using the coffee I have to get myself oriented. I will continue to add pigment to the cup till I'm happy with the color that I've got. But the gist of it is that the parts that are furthest, that is the sides of the drawing, would be darker. Then the parts that are closer to me, the closest, that is the center of the cup, is going to be the brightest. And for the handle as well, it will be the same thing. There are only two things to keep in mind while wearing the pigment or the darkness or the lightness of the brown is distance and shadow. So the edge of the handle, the part of the handle that is connected to the cup, is going to be darker because the cup is going to be putting a bit of a shadow on it. The inside of the cup, which I'm painting right now, so you use little pigment and keep painting. I'm happy with it, but I think it does not give as much of dimension as I'd like it to, both in terms of shadow as well as in terms of depth. So I'm going to be using a little more pigment and darkening all the areas that were previously darkened so that it becomes a little more darker. So that's the inside of the cup. That's the outside that separates the top border of the cup. And this is for depth. See, there's hardly anything in the center because I want to show like the light is falling there and it's the closest to me. The left side, it's darker. And yeah, now I'm pretty happy with this. So I'm just going to be bordering everything and drawing parallel lines just for a design on the table. But you don't necessarily have to do that, only if you want to do it. So this is about it. I really love the way it looks. I hope you enjoyed the session and see you for the next one.